Today would be the 95th birthday of Malcolm X, and if you were to look up the birthday of MLK, you would notice also that that guy would have been about 90 years old now. So, I mention this because I'm making a video right now on the differences between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. and simply comparing them. It's a versus competition here. What I'm going to talk about is how they're fundamentally different in their approach as well. Now, if you grew up in a neoliberal society such as the United States of America, you would understand that you learn about this guy, Martin Luther King, about as much as you learn about the Holocaust and, it's shoved down your throat. This guy is very important in history as he is one of the most pivotal blacks that advocated for civil rights, that lobbied the president, that sat in diners, that sat in places until the white guys kicked him out in protest of harmonization of the races. This is extremely vital. He is a pivotal figure in getting rid of Jim Crow. He is a pivotal figure in the coming together of whites and blacks, nominally speaking, under the law, and finally achieving equality but not equity. Now, Malcolm X is important because while he wanted blacks to be enfranchised, he did not want harmony among the whites. He viewed himself as different from the white man and did not want to be a part of it. He was a black separatist and he was a black nationalist, which is very different from what MLK wanted. And he thought that MLK was a Trojan horse, that he was a puppet to the Jews and the whites, that he was a puppet to the elites, vaguely speaking. That is to say, that he was way more radical. If you were to look at this, it'd be like Joe Biden is MLK, Bernie Sanders is Malcolm X. Now, while MLK is obviously a more reasonable guy, you would understand that Malcolm X is very acutely correct in a lot of things, and it is very simply comes down to a competition of a couple quotes. For example, Martin Luther King would say, "I have a dream," whereas MLK would say, "by any means necessary." That is a revolutionary spirit in MLK versus the subversive kind of mealy mouth approach of Martin Luther King. And while Malcolm X is respected among the blacks, it is not necessarily the same difference. It is not necessarily an equal respect for both. One is pushed by the establishment, what is pushed by the textbooks in history, and that is predominantly Martin Luther King. Although Martin Luther King maybe wasn't as devoutly for blacks as was Malcolm X, because Malcolm X wanted his own country of blacks. But what is simply put is, why do people suppress the narrative about Malcolm X? When you learn about Malcolm, the two paragraphs in a textbook you'd read about him, you would understand, fundamentally speaking, that he simply was not pro-Jew. That's the problem. He was anti-Jew. He was slandered at the time. And I believe also that if you were to look at the ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center, they say that he's an ambivalent anti-Semite. Well, what is that? And when you listen to people such as E. Michael Jones, you would understand that he was juxtaposed to many people, and you can't look. For example, he was seen as somebody that was antagonistic to the establishment, and that's completely valid, and that's completely true. If Malcolm X had it his way, it would be detrimental to the United States in a lot of ways, and they would lose ground and they would lose a lot of money. It is important to get this through to people's heads, as he is, importantly, a guy who went into the Islamic Brotherhood, into the Nation of Islam, more accurately said, and he contradicted the fundamental Christian organizations of the world. Why? Because he wanted to he wanted to be a socialist. He wanted to be on the left. He wanted to be a Trotskyite. He wanted to be pro-black, and that simply wasn't compatible with the establishment. That's exactly why there's a huge difference between these people and how they're covered, as well as how much they are covered. There's a reason why there's a Martin Luther King Day, but today is not Malcolm X Day. It's just the anniversary of him dying several years ago. That is exactly it. There was nothing different. And if you were to look at anti-Semitic quotes by this guy Malcolm X, you would understand that he is just just blatantly slandered by so much media, and it's to discredit the fact, to discredit his movement, and you know, it's very, very frustrating to read all these things, and it's similar to Louis Farrakhan to some extent, and it is also similar to other people, black nationalists that don't like Jews and that are slandered by the Jewish media. I think that it is acutely a problem of a lot of black nationalists that the white establishment hates them, and that people such as Martin Luther King just coon the white guy. Very interesting dynamic. I'm not particularly like in terms of who I like between these two men. I would say Malcolm X on principle is a better guy. Whereas if you were to look into in depth, like I have somewhat into Martin Luther King's life, you would understand that he is a adulterer, that he cheated on his wife, that he was into some really bad things. If you were to read the FBI reports about him, and of course, the FBI were spying on these guys, and isn't that bad news? That goes to another thing. So imagine they were spying on Martin Luther King, who was supposedly a puppet according to Malcolm X. Imagine what they were doing to him. So, guys, let's be into this. I think, look, people, I really do think that Malcolm X was a better man in terms of he was completely genuine and he did not compromise in his beliefs. And people used to call him the Black Hitler. I think that's ridiculous. That's such an oxymoron. And I think that by him being killed, it ruined a movement, and that was the entire plan. That was the entire plan this entire time to de-enfranchise those people that are too radical. No, it is better to have the black man be on welfare under the white man's jurisprudence than for him to be free, is something that Malcolm X basically believed. And when he said, I think it was the slavery at the ballot or whatever that was, that speech that said that the blacks would be enslaved by the Democrats, I think that's a very, very astute observation by Malcolm X. He knew it. And, ever since he has died, for several decades, ever since FDR, I believe, African Americans have been nominally Democratic by over 80% almost every single election, it would seem, since Nixon even, because he knew that if the Democratic Party, or they are seen as the liberals, instead of, maybe the traditional socialists that Malcolm X wanted, black people would vote for those people that supposedly freed them or want more civil rights for them or more welfare or more peanuts. And Malcolm X just said, don't settle for peanuts. That's the difference between Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Martin Luther King Jr. sat in a diner dreaming, he was having a dream that the white man would finally accept them. And when he patronizingly wrote a document that gave them equality but not equity, Malcolm X knew astutely what was going on, because he fundamentally understood that in order for as a race to get ahead in the large scheme of things, it would seem apparent that you would have to have your own civilization or you have your own identity. And if that gets washed out, you are no longer black. You are an American. And look, I don't necessarily endorse what he said because, I'm an American first, and I don't think 30 million black people just leaving the country or declaring their own country within our lands is bad. I mean, good. It is a problem, but like I said, a lot more genuine, a lot more respectable even than Martin Luther King's hogwashed or whitewashed identity. And guys, I wonder what you guys think about this, because he is simply another cog in the machine if you look at things in the perspective of MLK's life versus a guy like Malcolm X, who wanted to change things radically and got killed for it. Maybe people should look into that assassination again. We gotta look at this. This man died at 39 years old. That is too young, honestly. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll keep you posted on more videos in the future. There's a Discord server. I'm going to put it in the description, and go ahead and follow it so you can get into a political Discord. And that would be very fun, maybe. Thanks all.